On this episode, we dive into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, how we handle gaming burnout, and we debate our best stealth game selections on the Pixel Picks Showdown. All this on the Pixel Parent Podcast. Next episode of the Pixel Parents Podcast, the show that discusses all things gaming from the perspective of parents. I am, of course, your host, Liam Kirkkelvin, and I'm joined by none other than Scott, the Tastemaker Curry. How are you doing, Scott?
I am tired.
And why would that be?
It's midnight on WrestleMania 40th day 2. I've just watched and coached you through the ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which we'll obviously talk about. But yeah, tired. Had a pretty hectic weekend, so it's been pretty good. But we can obviously talk about that at some point.
The lengths we go to bring you some podcasts. Yeah, dedication.
How are
dedication. I'm fine. I'm feeling all right. To be honest with you, it's like that episode of Still Game when Jack and Victor take those tablets and they're feeling buzzing.
Pure buzzing about
they
it.
just crack open a bubbaloo halfway through it or something. You know, I'm actually quite buzzing, so I might be speaking faster than usual. Yeah, the joys of caffeine. But yeah, before we dive into it, of course, if you want to be part of the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Just come and say hello, share your thoughts with us at Pixel_Parents on Twitter. Not going to call it the other name. Or, of course, you can write into us with your own picks and thoughts and opinions at pixelparentspodcast@gmail.com. But, of course, you've touched on it before there, Scott. So I suppose we should kick things off, as we always do. What you've been playing?
Okay, I'll talk about it for 2 more minutes and then we can obviously get to the main event.
The meat.
Yeah, so I've obviously kind of been continuing to play Dragon's Dogma and the claws are still not in yet, but they're starting to sort of break the skin a wee bit. You know, they're still not 100% sold on it.
Yeah.
Still bothers me when I'm playing it. I'm not, entirely enjoying myself, but there's wee moments, tiny wee moments that it's like, this is great.
Just peppered in.
And it's not, if you didn't do something specifically as you were doing like a certain fight or something, you would never know it would happen. So you would lose the opportunity to do it and you'd have to find it some other way. But it's, there's something about it that just irks me as I play it.
Yeah.
I'm not enjoying myself, Hey, and I think it is the fallout from Rebirth that I've played that for so long that I actually want to go back and play it again.
Yeah.
I'm completely obsessed with it. But I'll persevere. As I say, I'll persevere with Dragon's Dogma and I'll continue with it. But I do see me dropping it before I finish it.
Yeah.
I want to finish it because, what's the point in buying it otherwise? But I'll see how I go on with it.
I mean, it might just not be the right time. Timing's really crucial with games, as we know. I've been really intrigued to hear what your thoughts are on it, and I'm very likely going to dive into that next. Although I've had a real hankering to go back to Red Dead Redemption 2. Kind of blame social media for that. I'm easily swayed. But just to kind of explore it. So I might make a pit stop there just to, I don't know, just ask about, explore the world a wee bit. I do not have a whole replay in me of that game.
You do though. You definitely do.
I know, but I'm also like, Dragon's Dogma 2 is pulling me in with the whole fantasy adventure side of it. And, again, I keep saying it's smoke without fire, but hearing you say that it's not grabbing you is kind of putting a couple of alarm bells off for me personally, because I'm like, right, well, if it's not going to grab you, it's got a good chance of not grabbing me, So
I think that you have interests in that genre, that
explain the genre.
The fantasy kind of thing. Like, I know it seems daft that we're obviously going to talk about Final Fantasy, but it's a totally different kind of thing. But for these, Lord of the Rings type things. Like you love Lord of the Rings, and I don't at all. But
He really does.
I
He's just
don't.
not
I
admitting
honestly
it
don't. I've seen them all, but
many times.
don't enjoy them at all. I don't. My wife absolutely loves them, and she'll watch them to death. But I see it, and I just can't be bothered with it. I don't understand it. I really don't. Stupid wee hairy feet. But I'm not even going to start it. I can't be bothered. But there's something about there's just something about Dragon's Dogma. It kind of looks like I'm playing it. It might even just be me. It might even just be like my TV I'm playing it on, but it can't be because it's brand new.
Yeah.
But it looks like I'm playing it through Vaseline. You know, I'm looking at it through Vaseline. There's like a strange film on it as you play it, and everything's just so slow and like turgid, and like it's just. Oh, I just can't. I can't find any. There's moments of enjoyment in it, and it's all about the pawns and the kind of the characters that you play as and stuff. And as I say, part of the enjoyment that I have in it at the moment is just playing as a character called Sting, who does bear a tiny wee resemblance to the wrestler Sting. So it's like I'm enjoying that, but
have you been tempted to like put it down and just go to Rise of the Ronin?
I have been, but I think we've spoken about it before at length, but it's the value for money. You know, it's like I'm maybe stubborn that way, that I'll play something that I hate just because I've bought it. You know, like pure hate play it.
Yeah.
Like, this is pure shit. Like I just have to get it out of my system. And there's been a few games in the past that I've done that with, but you do by the end of it start enjoying it.
Yeah.
But with this, I just can't find anything that I like about it at the moment, which is sad. But as I say, I'll hopefully change my mind on it.
Fingers crossed for you. I mean, there's nothing. You know, you can't win them all. That's
exactly.
it, isn't it? The likelihood is we're going to purchase some games and it's just not going to click. In which case, I suppose we could always punt it, trade it in, I suppose. But I know what you mean. It's like the principle, almost like I have spent money in this. I want to get something back.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. I'm trying to remember the last game that happened to me with, and I'm not sure. It's not coming to me, so I'm not going to linger on it. But yeah, I'm hoping that it gets its hooks in you.
Aye, I think it will. I think it will because there's a lot to do in it, and I think you do sometimes place limitations on yourself in the way that you're going to approach it. Like you won't fast travel anywhere because there's too much of the world to see and stuff, and you'll maybe go and collect every single thing that you can find.
Yeah.
And that gets a little bit tedious after a while. But I said to you last week that we spoke, it's the same enemies every single time.
Yeah.
Like if it's not a weird lizard, it's a skeleton. If it's not a skeleton, it's a goblin.
Yeah.
If it's not that, it's a band of bandits and stuff like that. Like that's the rotating enemy types that I'm fighting. And there's no differences there now. I'm obviously still in the same area, but I'm hoping that as you move through, that will change. But for the moment, at least, there's been no difference. You've obviously got your big boss type enemies, but then they just become the same. There's no differences in them. Like there's a werewolf type thing. Like that's it.
Yeah.
And then you fight another one that looks exactly the same. Even if there was I might be asking for too much here, but I was thinking about, you know how much I've been longing to play like the Shadow of Mordor games all over again, right?
Yep.
And like every single time you've done something in that game, there was always consequences of it. But all the characters that sort of you played in it and kind of characters that you fought in it all looked different and they all had purpose. So even if you had like, you go to a town and similar to The Witcher, you've got not contracts, but there's like notes that explain there's a Cyclops thing in this area. We kind of keep an eye out for it. Fun. But keep an eye out for it, and it has like its own personality. There's reason for it to be there, and it looks different. It's like it maybe has a nice wee suit on or something like that, and it has it's just they're all the same.
I'm kind of, when you're saying that, I'm reminded of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
So
with the bokoblins.
That is, I was thinking about it the other day, and that style of game it is basically just what Dragon's Dogma is.
Yeah.
Like, but done. I didn't enjoy Breath of the Wild, but I really got on board with Tears of the Kingdom. So I loved it. And the variety was there in certain ways, and the way that you moved about the world was there. But that sort of open world drop you in, and you find that you don't really find the adventure. The adventure finds you.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you do in Dragon's Dogma. Like, you'll be walking through a town and someone will walk up and ask you something, and it's just like, that's cool. But there's not really enough of that yet. And even the stuff that you're doing, it's just your standard, go and fight this thing, come back. Or, I mean, the most interesting part that I've done at the moment is there's a few sort of story beats around a certain area, and it's kind of that's been a wee bit interesting. But even then, the way that they do it is just there's no heft to it. It's just like it's done and that's it. You jump out and then that's you. But if you're going to describe it like a game, it's basically just your modern day Zelda games.
Okay.
But not done. I wouldn't even say not done quite as well, because I didn't enjoy Breath of the Wild, but it was
just done differently.
Just done differently.
I mean,
it's
this is where aesthetic and art style can have a big effect.
I think that's it, because you've obviously got the towns and stuff like that in Zelda, and they all look a wee bit different, and they all have like a community and like things around them and stuff. Especially Tears of the Kingdom, the places that you went to, and that it was always sort of buzzing with life.
Yeah.
And Dragon's Dogma 2 is the same, but you're only there for specific reasons. You're not there to actually do anything. It's always like go and get a new sword, or go and buy a new outfit, or go and change your vocation so you can become a different class. And it's just like, right, but what else?
Yeah.
Like, it's maybe just me, but I'm not vibing with it at the moment. And as I say, I hope it changes, because there's obviously a reason why it scored so well. But I don't think it's helped that I've come off the back of Rebirth.
Yeah.
I don't think it's helped that I've come off the back of a game that I've truly enjoyed. I poured all my time into that, and it felt like it gave me everything I wanted back from it. And we always talk about our transitions into the way, the different things that we introduce things, and I've just hit you with the best transition.
Yes.
So, on you go.
Well, yeah, I'm pleased to say that I have finally finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's happened. Been talking about it for weeks. It's kind of almost a little bit bittersweet, in the sense that, before we started this podcast, probably around about the same time as we started it. That's been the advent of my kind of Final Fantasy VII appreciation, and I've just been on this journey, and going through Remake, absolutely just kind of getting swept up with it all, and knowing that I had Rebirth going right into it was like, being at a buffet for one. It's like, here's all this good food, good eating, and you can just get stuck in and just kind of plunge yourself right into it. And now that I'm at the end of it, it's hit me. I'm like, oh, right, now I have to wait for the rest. And I think it's one of those ones where I'm tempted now to go back and play, the Final Fantasy VII OG. But as a, kind of review in a nutshell with Rebirth, totally worth all the hype, warranted. I didn't find the ending to be disappointing. And I say that's someone new to it. I found it to be quite satisfying. Raises a lot of questions in a good way that a lot of the kind of best pop culture franchises do, because it keeps you engaged, it keeps you invested in what they're going to do next. And I think, I didn't finish off all the open worlds. I think when I got about 3/4 through it, I decided to abandon the completionist style and just golden path it.
I think that it should also just go without saying that there will be, spoilers and stuff discussed.
Yes, because I think from this point onwards, it's safe to say, because we want to dive into it. I think we said this last week. So if you've not finished the game, or if you just don't want to know, we'll probably just say, just come back at a later time, or just skip forward in the podcast. But yeah, from this point onwards, now
Yeah.
The spoilers are going to be here for the game. But yeah, I have questions. I
Okay.
have so many questions.
So before you hit me with those,
Mhm.
in terms of my own thoughts on it, it was, it's a tough ask coming off a Rebirth, coming off of obviously the original Final Fantasy VII, and creating a game that has to be part two in a trilogy. Now, I think they've done an amazing job at it. I
Mhm.
think it's done such a good job in terms of leaving it at a point where you want to come back and find out what happens next.
Yeah.
We spoke about it earlier on, like the characters that you find in the game and stuff as well. Like, you've obviously never experienced Yuffie, you'd never experienced Kate Sith, you'd never experienced Red 13 until obviously Remake, but
Mhm.
properly experienced them. Now you've got your first kind of look at Sid and Vince.
Yep.
Vincent. So Vince. So it's kind of giving you a reason to come back. Like it's obviously kind of for that. But for me, I've obviously got experience with these characters.
Yeah.
And set aside the way that he's been sort of portrayed in this, I'm a little bit not disappointed with, but it's something that I'm not 100% invested in him yet, because it's not exactly the way that I thought it was going to be. But it doesn't mean that he's bad.
No, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. Is from my perspective, it's like you're probably about 3/4 or 2/3 through the game, and then Sid's just is plonked in,
Yeah.
and really he is like a fast travel
Yeah.
an actor. You do have the bit, when the wings come off the tiny Bronco and stuff like that, and you start to kind of flesh out, and then the ties to Edith's mum
Mm-hmm.
and all the rest of that, and you're starting to see hints of, right, okay, the breadcrumbing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose with Vincent as well, like plonked in the kind of final act of the game, and he actually even had a lesser part to play. So if you're not familiar with him,
Yeah.
it's one of those ones, like, I'm not looking at it as, well, what was the point in that? It's more
Yeah.
like, right, they're teeing this up the same way they did with Red 13
Yeah.
and Remake, where it was like he was plonked in the
Yeah.
final act as well.
It's done so well because Vincent is purposely ambiguous at this point,
Yeah.
because his ties to the story are wider than you'll probably think they are.
Mhm.
And I don't want to go into that. It's going to be so hard talking to you about what's going to happen next without actually telling you what physically happens next. But
Accept the challenge.
I'll see, especially this time. But I was happy with the ending.
Yeah.
I think that the way that it ended, it had to end in the same way.
Mhm.
You couldn't have had a storyline where Aerith is still alive.
Yeah.
Like, I know, sorry, if you've not, if you haven't accepted the spoiler warning, Aerith dies in Final Fantasy VII, and she also dies in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah.
Or does she? No, she does. But it has to end like that, and it also has to end in that way for Cloud, and for the sort of overarching plot of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
But since I finished it, I have just become invested in the whole universe of Final Fantasy VII all over again. Went out my way to go and watch, Advent Children,
Uh-huh.
which, is peak Final Fantasy VII, and it's so stupid, but it's fantastic. Like, it's brilliant. And I can obviously tell you about that if you want to, but there's nothing in there that's immediately relevant.
Uh-huh.
There's parts of it you kind of, Sid's a bit more like himself in this. Like, he's kind of a bit more like he is in Rebirth, but kind of played that, and now I went out on eBay and bought Dirge Cerberus, the Vincent game, so which has absolutely terrible reviews. I mean, it's probably the worst reviewed Final Fantasy game that you'll ever find, but
That'll be fun.
there's heart in it apparently, so I'm really, really excited for that. But for me, I'm pleased the way that it's ended. And after you had mentioned that there had been some, negative reviews for it based on the ending and people weren't happy about it, I was a bit like, oh God, what have they gone and done? But it's just fueled my interest in it more.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's things that we know, but if I was coming at it from your point of view, where there's things being said in that game that mean nothing to you at the moment, but will come into their own in part 3, and they'll make so much more sense. It's like, I've obviously played Remake in the run up to this game coming out because I want to see what happens, and I'll probably go back and play Remake soon to find out if there's anything in that game that kind of makes a bit more sense because of Rebirth, and then play Rebirth the same way. But there's so much, and there's so much to come.
I mean, that's the thing. It's done a good job of kind of setting up potential questions for the future. I'm looking at this as very much, I bought the ticket, I'm taking the ride, and let's just see where it goes. And I'm a fan of that style of storytelling where there are questions, and will they all pay off? We don't know yet. Like, how they execute it is going to be like key to this. And I do wonder, what would I like to see in part 3, reunion, whatever, we'll just call it reunion for now, seems to be the most like sensible way to kind of title that. But I think, when I look at Remake as such a tight package, and it was the way that they executed that was great. Really loved it. They probably actually could have probably added a little bit more, but I see why they've separated it in the way they have. And I compare it to Rebirth, where it's a different experience, totally different game. We spoke about the open world before. Would I say that they do that again next time? I'd kind of like to see them, I don't know, try and dial that back and do a little bit more of Remake in it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think those open world sections really added too much. Actually, to the point where when I was kind of going through the completionist side of it, I had forgotten a lot of the strands that they were setting up story-wise. And then when I got back to the story, it was about chapter 7, and it was pulsating, and it's like, this is fantastic. This is why I'm here.
Yeah.
And, it's optional.
Yeah.
That's the thing with open worlds. Like, it can be a big complaint. It's like the amount of times I hear people whinge about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It was too big. It's like, we didn't have to fucking play the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's right. F-bombs.
I know.
Impassioned. But that's a good ass game though. But I think I have to say, as someone who has platinumed that game, it's very good. But with Rebirth, it does it well, and it's enjoyable.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. I'm playing this, and it's like, oh, it's it's Ubisoft. I don't really care. It's like, that's what I'm there. It's comfort food. I can sit and churn through that. But looking at it from an experience point of view, I am kind of now I'm removed from it, thinking, well, what did that really add to it, other than making the world feel more grand and huge? And I think I get why they've done it, because the scale is like, I feel like I'm in part of this larger than life world, going in between the regions and kind of getting an understanding for the geography and stuff. So I'm intrigued to see how they do that in the next chapter. I know they've said when they set out to do this trilogy, they want to deliver a new experience every time, so who knows what they do next time. Then they might, I have a funny feeling that they might deviate slightly from this approach for Rebirth, and they'll take those criticisms on board, because I think that was probably the weakest part.
Aye.
But damn, like, they more than make up for it with how it presents the story and delivers those like absolutely epic story beats, like with the boss battles and the character development, which is just second to none, really. Like, when I get to the end of it, and as someone who's looking at it like from a complete numpties perspective of like, I don't know where this is going, and probably by the time a reunion comes out, I will, because I probably will have played original again and seen it through. But I think looking at like, what are they trying to set up here? Like, at first I thought, is it an alternate reality? Is it a purgatory death? Is it timelines? There's so many different things, space time that's happening around there. And I'm kind of right now, I'm thinking that is it a bit in between, just kind of like, is it all these things happening at once? It's just the way Big Seth Rollins was talking about, how everything effectively can happen, but it's all leading to, certain points destiny wise. You've got all these black whispers going about the place, grey ones, white ones, this role in it as the kind of the yin and yang kind of relationship between Sephiroth and Aerith's influence on that kind of central destined fate of what's to happen. But also, I think they're making a point in that they made it in remake. They're breaking away from Destiny. They're forging a new path, but they've kind of created a new timeline. They've created a new something, new reality in doing so. And I mean, it's not quite how, like, how the MCU, for example, would handle time. You know, like something branches off, and then there's a sacred timeline and all that stuff as a kind of a touchstone, say. But you raised a point. We were speaking before we started recording, in your theory, like with what's happening with Cloud, and you saying that, which you should share, definitely makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And it's actually much more interesting than just alternate timelines.
I think it's because I obviously know what happens in the game. Like, in the Sacred Path to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Remake and Reunion, if it's going to be called that, is OG Final Fantasy VII Path, and everything breaks off from that. But obviously, Cloud is messed up. Like, and you see it from the end where, you know, he sees Aerith when nobody else can see her. But you also see it throughout the whole game as well. You see it the whole way through Remake too. There's just constant flashes in his head. And they always sort of kind of flash back to moments that happen in the actual original game too. You see one of the big ones at the end, and you know, Reunion is a lot. Like, you know, it's a word that's thrown about a lot in this game, but it's thrown about a lot in the actual original game, and it means more. But there's loads that can be said about it. That's the thing. Like, we've obviously, as you go through, you see Stamp and stuff as well, the dogs, and they sort of obviously then show you that there's different timelines. There's issues with the rainbows and stuff like that as well, the rainbow effect on the screen, where that's showing you, you know, what sort of Cloud thinks he's seeing. And then that reality. So in that reality, obviously, Aerith wakes up and everything's fine. He managed to stop Sephiroth's sword. But we see what, at the end of it, we actually see the whole party come together and see that Aerith is dead. They're all sitting around the live stream watching. Obviously, the body has now sunk into there, but Cloud is none the wiser. And you mentioned obviously PTSD and stuff like that as well, but it's set it up perfectly for what, if you play the OG Final Fantasy, you'll know exactly what's coming. And there's part of me that's like, play it so you know what's coming, so you can kind of understand, and it maybe elevates it a bit more when it happens. But there's also a part of me that's like, just wait.
Stay in the
just
dark.
To stay in the dark with it, because it's maybe a bit more interesting, you know? It's like watching... It's kind of like, it's kind of like watching the Star Wars movies all over again. Like, you know what happens, but it's like, still good, you know? But if you were to watch the Star Wars movies for the first time and watch it from, you know, the Phantom Menace, you'd be like, this is the real shit.
Or actually, I'm thinking it's a bit like your favourite film franchise, Lord of the Rings. It's like I'm seeing the films as they're coming out in the cinema, and you've read the books and you're going to see the films. So you kind of know what's happening. But there's an interpretation of the original source material happening in front of you.
It's just, you know, it's a hard one, because I know I'd like you to know what happens, so then I can say, this is what happens in Rebirth, this is what happens in Rebirth, and it all comes together in a neat little package, and then it sends you on its way.
Well,
but I actually can't say that though, because it's not.
You just don't know.
I just don't know. Like, you obviously see at the end of Rebirth that Cloud's like, don't look up. It's just an illusion. And it's in his head. He's seeing this.
So he's kind of almost talking to himself at that point.
So he's talking out loud, but they don't see what he sees. Now, there's loads of interpretations of it online, and you know, it really depends on how you want to look at it. But one of the kind of key points in the end is that when you finally beat Sephiroth in that massive fight and stuff, and you know, you're standing back to back with Aerith holding hands, and then she disappears. So people say that at that point in time, because he's physically touched Aerith, anyone that's had physical contact with Aerith can see the timelines, can see things that, that have changed, and can see, like different realities and things play out. And apparently people are saying that because he's touched her, he can see the things in the sky, so the different realities play out kind of within themselves. But I just don't know what they're going to do with it. Like,
there's a question of the white materia that she's given him that's now clear. I can't really remember at what point she did that in the forest.
So she takes you come back from the whole dream world sequence where it's just you and her together. You're walking through Midgar.
Yep.
And you're on like a wee date together. That's her purposely protecting you from the point that you know is coming. Like, she's purposely holding you there so you don't have to experience what's just about to happen, because she knows what's coming. That's why she has that white materia. We spoke about it earlier in terms of, memory.
Yep.
Once you leave Midgar from Remake, it's clear. She looks at it and she said, I don't remember anything. She feels like something's missing. Then by the end, she puts it back in her hair. Everything's sort of shiny, and she's basically dragging you, holding your hand through that point onwards. And that's, that's why people think that, the white whispers are Aerith's will at that point there, where she's kind of pushing you to what's coming.
Yep.
There's a point where you fight them just before you go into is it the Temple of the Ancients? No, it can't be that. It's the other one.
It's just before you start fighting the big bad battle with Sephiroth.
It's basically the area where you go where she dies.
Yeah.
And you have to fight a number of them before you get in, which it wasn't. I'm not really 100% sure on at that point why. Maybe she's trying to protect you from that again. Maybe she's trying to stop you from entering in there again. But it's at the end of the day, Aerith has to like she has to for the story and for everything that comes. She has to go. And having watched Advent Children and understanding how that proceeds, if that's canonical, then what happens next?
Yeah,
they can't. I don't think they can retcon the entire, entire.
Well, Destiny's such a huge
catalog
theme within this story so far, and it seems to be it must be present in the original. But Destiny and Fate is such a huge thing here, so I don't see them changing it. I mean, it's kind of like sacred text at this point. I mean, they'd be mad if they would be like, yeah, let's just change that at the end and totally skew off. I see them, blending it together and doing this adaptation in a way that honors the original, but they can still stretch it out, flesh it out, and kind of have much more fun in terms of. I don't think it'll be straightforward. I think they're going to have probably a pretty ambiguous ending that's going to leave people just with a couple of not like questions, but more like I saw it this way and I saw it that way, that type of thing, how they interpreted it, but which is cool. And I think this is such a testimony to what they've done, because you've just said, like, what's coming ahead, like at least the big beats that they kind of have to like kind of land, but you're also questioning. It's like, well, it's the how. How are they going to do it?
How they do it. There's so many things that are to come, and there's moments in Rebirth that I said to you earlier on. There's things that are said in Rebirth that will make sense, but you've probably not noticed them. It's not you. That's just like generally speaking. Like if you had no experience with Final Fantasy VII,
just go right over my head.
You would go right over your head. Yeah. Like, it's said and you're like, all right, okay, that's fine. Whereas it'll make a lot more sense in 3, but 3 Union. But it's just dead interesting. I hope, it might seem a bit kind of daft as a sort of gameplay feature, but I'd love to have it like where Aerith is there.
Yeah.
And she kind of, you obviously don't play as her, but like she's kind of there in moments where you're kind of doing certain things and you kind of see her.
Mhm.
Like, she's like commentating on certain things, or like she shows up in the world and it's like only Cloud can see her.
Aye, like an Arkham Knight Joker type thing.
Yeah, exactly like that. I think that would be it's a very interesting way to approach it, because it keeps Aerith in the story at that point, where in the actual original, she's gone and you never really think about it again until 5 minutes to the end, and then that's it, like that's it.
Yourself.
It's it doesn't really sort of give her much more of an opportunity to make an impact in it, but there's so much to come. They did the bit with Tifa, like where she falls into the Mako and you kind of relive moments in Nibelheim. That it happens earlier than I thought it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it happens in a different way. But oh my god, there's so much to drop, and it's like once they hit that mark, it'll be mind blowing, like genuinely for you, because it's such a big reason why things happen and things are happening.
Yeah.
That everything will all come together and it'll all make sense. And then from there, it's like you're kind of scrambling around in the dark, and then you find the light and you just walk through.
Yeah.
Like that's basically where we are now, where we think that everything's moving forward when it starts to go in a big maze and stuff like that, and then you finally just go boop, and that's you straight to it. But there's just so many things that you can say without saying anything. It's like, how does Cloud know that Sephiroth's up north?
Yeah.
How does he know that?
Soldier's instinct.
Of course, yeah. It's
the black materia,
yes,
like
the big one, aye.
Edith's presence, how the rest of the party feel about Cloud at this point, because don't forget, in the lead up to the climax of Rebirth, Cloud wasn't himself. Barrett's been doubting him a lot, and just kind of you can feel that, even like in the final interaction in the last cutscene, and I feel like the trust is kind of eroded. Tifa she was very, very quiet in those events in the last. I mean, there's lots there. There's lots, but the good thing is, we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Plenty of time until Rebirth happens. So we're not going to burn ourselves out on this topic, right? Which leads me on to the kind of main topic I wanted to talk about today, which wasn't Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but really I just wanted to just talk about Burnout, because, we've finished a couple of gargantuan games. We're about to jump into it. We're quite happy to just keep on eating what's in front of us, because, there's a lot of good games. But really, I just kind of want to talk about moments where you do feel burnt out in gaming, and what triggers it, what pulls you back, after a time out. And it could be, in a lot of cases, impacted by responsibilities around you. Particularly, if you go through big life events, or if the kids are going through something and you're just like, I just don't have it in me. What comes to mind when you're thinking about that?
I think it's just, there's periods of time where you're maybe having to deal with like sickness and stuff like that all day. You're having to deal with, being unwell, and maybe the little ones unwell, or significant others unwell, and you're having to sort of deal with everything. It gets to the end of the night, and you're just like, the will is there, but the mind, what is it? The mind is willing, but the spirit is weak, or something like that.
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
That's the one. Too tired for this, but it's kind of like that. It's aye, and even just a case of you've played something for with Dragon's Dogma. I've played it for so long. I'm just like, I can't be bothered. Like, I just can't be bothered doing it. But if you're sort of bringing it obviously to the main focus of the podcast, it's definitely something that even just like a birthday party or something like that, setting up for a birthday party, having family over, you might just want to, the end of the night, your social battery is just depleted at that point in time, and you just want to go hide away, play something. You sit down at the computer and you just sit and go, I can't even be arsed.
Aye.
And it could be shoving something on YouTube, or kind of my favourite thing to do is just scroll through the sales page in the PlayStation Store.
Yeah,
It's, I don't know why I do it.
Maybe it's one time that this one item that's not been in sale ever pops up, but usually it's always the same games. But I mean, the reason I wanted to bring it up on this one is because, you know, the hopefully will be other parents or gamers listening to this, and I don't really want to kind of give the impression that Scott and I are always like playing games with every spare second. Like it's not. The reality is it's not. You know, it's a our main hobby. You know, one of our main passions in life, of course, is gaming and keeping up to date, and we're lucky enough to be able to do that. But you know, life does find a way to stop you, and you know, there's times where you're just like, like you said, I can't be asked. And a lot of the times, yeah, like when you've got kids running about and you've got to juggle stuff like that. I mean, it could be like classic case, like, you know, like my daughter, for example, she'll go through bouts of just not wanting to sleep.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's one of the pitfalls of like the ASD, but it's also like, it's really common for all kids. They'll go through a phase where it's like, hey, I'm not tired. And, you know, you're absolutely exhausted and burnt out, but that has a long tail. Like, all it takes is one bad night to take you right out the swing. And usually when I'm feeling burnt out, you know, the weight of responsibility, I kind of then kind of go into like a self-care and almost like I just want to sleep and prioritize that. And what I'll do is I'll kind of go to bed early, and I might actually just kind of take a week out or something. It's probably like, because a lot of the time, like I can make my way through a lot of games in a year, but I don't really kind of chew through them as fast as what I used to.
Oh, 100%, aye.
And that's obviously, we've spoken about it before, because, you know, you've got to work, you've got to look after the kids, you've got to, you know, be a good partner and all the other stuff. That all comes first. So we can't just sit in our pants all day just burning through games like we used to. I know. Damn it.
I know.
But it's one of those ones where like me, I could sometimes see myself when I'm in that mood where it's like, damn, like something's kicked my ass today. It could just be like the kids have just really, you know, taken all my energy for good or bad. You know, you could have just been just busy, just doing what you usually do, or you could have been playing or had a day out or something. And then like 2 days later, I'm still just done in. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to bed at 8 o'clock. But what I tend to find is in those moments of burnout, I'll kind of go through the usual cycles. Like I might just kind of go and watch some comfort viewing, you know. So, you know, right now I've been rewatching like The Mighty Bush, which I hadn't watched in ages. Or I'll go back and watch King of the Hill. Animated shows are always kind of the go-to for me.
Yeah.
But then you'd mentioned it. YouTube, I always find is that kind of welcome back.
Yeah.
Where I will go to the usual destinations, and I'll watch like long play videos of like Dark Souls run throughs or speed runs. Like the both of us enjoy speed runs quite a lot. And it kind of brings us back. And I think that must be just such a normal thing that kind of connects us all.
Yeah.
If you're a parent and a gamer, that sensation of burnout, and I know it's particularly if you're engaged with the online community, FOMO's a real thing, you know, and it could be like, oh, this game's out or that game's out, and everybody's playing it, and it's a new hotness, and before you know it, they've moved on, the conversation's moved on, but you're like, I'm just picking this up. And I suppose it's really just the main message is it's like it's going to happen.
It's normal, isn't it? It's not. It's just the reality. I mean, I think that even without kids, you can still get burnt out, but you just deal with it better.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I think I've obviously got a friend at work that's just had a baby, 5 weeks old now, and it's just he's just like, I just want him to sleep. I just want to have a normal sleep. And I was like, well, I still want to have a normal sleep. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's 4 now, and it's like, I mean, it's better than it's ever been, but it's still, I'd still like to go to a point in my life where I could get up at 12:30 in the afternoon and not feel shame, you know? It's just, like, if I'm waking up any time past 9 o'clock, it's a bonus, but it never happens, because you're always up, there's always breakfast and stuff to make, and it's class. And I don't ever want it to seem like there's moaning about it, because it's not even about that. It's absolutely brilliant, and I love it. But there's also those moments where it is, you know, at the end of the night where you're just like, it's time to just go up, maybe go out and play something, and you just sit, just sit in the seat.
Yeah.
Just can't be bothered at all.
Aye.
Sometimes just like don't even turn anything on. I just sit and look at my phone for ages. And as you say, long plays and speed runs. I mean, I remember when we first had our little one, and I was sitting watching, speed runs done quick all the time. Like, I just put it on in the background. I mean, that and The Sopranos got me through the first few weeks.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you're up. You've maybe got an hour and a half. You can sit and watch, a daft video, or you can watch something on YouTube. And it kind of felt like, you're not playing something, but you're still engaging in what you love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can imagine that's what it's like for any hobby, musicians and stuff like that as well. But having a way that you're not completely out of the game, pardon now, but I'm on fire tonight.
Full of puns tonight.
But you're out of it. It's having a way still to engage in something that you enjoy without the physical act of, standing rocking a baby whilst trying to play Guitar Hero or something like that. It's impossible, but it's it kind of keeps you into it. But you also then, it's a trade-off, because Burnout is good because it's shown that you've obviously been part of things as well. Like, I would feel horrific shame that if I was upstairs playing my PlayStation when she's awake or she's doing anything in the house, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I just go to my wife, I'm just going to go upstairs and play Dragon's Dogma. Like, she's like, what? It would never fly, and it's never something I would do, because
just doesn't enter the thought process.
You don't. And as a parent, you might want to, like all day you're just like, I just want to get back and finish Final Fantasy VII, or I want to go back and just, play Call of Duty for a few hours or something like that. But never in 100 million years would I ever even think about doing it. But
that's madness.
I know. Imagine doing
like afraid for hypothetical Scott in this situation.
Yeah, it's like it never happens, and it never would happen. But it's aye.
Maybe I mean, there's the odd day where maybe if you're in the throes of it and you're in the opposite stages of burnout, where you're just like, I'm really, really enjoying my gaming just now, and you might be thinking for a split second, God, it'd be good to play that, but I'll wait till later, and then you look forward to it and you sit down, you get your protected time and space, whenever that is, usually, past 10 o'clock or something, when everyone's asleep around you. But I think it's important, because I remember when I first became a dad, and I remember, obviously, we're engaged in the online community of other fellow gamers at the time, but I always felt like it was not perpetuated, but there was almost like this expectation of like, I'll have a kid, and it's just going to be a different way of gaming, which is true, but that whole notion of like the burnout and all the rest of it occurring a lot more quickly, and it's just like, right, well, if you're tired and the brain's tired, they'll just sleep on you and you just game all the time. Oh, I finished Bloodborne 3 times when I had my... And it's like, that's a lot of bullshit, to be honest. It's like that prioritization and self-care aspect. And we'll spoke about it. And I think in future episodes, I do want to kind of touch on, or speak about as a topic about like kind of how gaming can support you through like mental health issues, particularly around like parenting. But I think, with burnout, it will occur, it does occur, and it's okay, because you might also feel pressure to stay connected and keep playing, because it's that part of you that's, just completely detached from your day to day. And I know that can be a pressure in itself, and it'd be exhausting, but I mean, without sounding like a Paddy Power advert, when the fun stops. Just like put down the controller. I think my best advice always to any parents out there that might be experiencing it is, it will come back. You'll feel burnt out in games, but you will find that need to kind of go back and get that time and just start enjoying the hobby again. Yeah. And if there's FOMO, if there's something else, like, it's just not worth it.
It's not worth pushing through. Like,
no.
As you say, it's... you're right in terms of just take the time to not get it back, but just let it come back naturally. It's
build a novelty.
You can't force it. It'll come and it'll go, and it'll come and it'll go.
because those kids will kick your ass.
Oh, aye. It's brilliant though. It is. It's class
That
because
is, aye.
it's a joy every single day, but it's it batters you like today.
It does.
Like we're obviously here going to watch WrestleMania tonight, but up at 6 o'clock this morning, and then I've been driving pretty much every single hour of the day since then. Came here at 8 o'clock, and I've just been sinking coffees and Monster, and here we are. But it's tomorrow. Might want to go and play something, but I can see it in my head already where it's get an early night, and I'm probably the biggest, hypocrite going on here because I'll tell myself go and get an early night, but then it's also gets to like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I'm like, aye, but you could also go and play something for a wee bit before you go to bed, and that perpetuates the same cycle as well, where I wake up the next day tired, do the same thing again. I'll get an early night tonight, wake up again tired the next day. So it's just,
I think you've described like the default state for gaming parents.
Yeah.
You do kind of have to live in that space of sabotaging your early night plans.
Yeah.
But with and we've both had it. Like you're just like I just can't.
Well, there's just nights that you do. Like last week, I remember going to my bed at 8 o'clock because it just been a particularly rotten day.
Yeah.
Like there are days like that, and as you say, it might not be you're burnt out from the actual physical act of gaming. It's just life hits you.
Yeah,
like kicks you square right in the balls, and it's just like you need to take a deep breath and push them back out. It's just it's
hold your nose and push.
It also helps having, it might not be easy enough for other people, but having people around you that are also in the same boat. Because I remember when obviously you had the kids, or when you'd had your first, and not a parent myself at that point in time, kind of a few years between them, but there was always an element of like, how can you not get online? Like how can you know? Like, I'm just sitting here fanning about by myself all the time. I mean, not that I'm pure pining for you. Like, please come back. I'm pure miss you, mate. But it's like, you don't understand it as someone who doesn't live that. And then the minute it became reality for me, it's like, well, that totally makes sense. Like, and even at that point in time, you do feel like you're letting people down as well. Like, you shouldn't kind of in the throes of parenthood for the first time, or even the second time, third time, fourth time, you might not have the same routine that you previously would have had. But I don't think that games at the moment lend themselves to lifestyle.
Yeah,
I don't think they have to. I mean, we can play through single player games at the sort of leisurely pace that we want to, but you're also then mindful of going onto Twitter. We're not saying ex Elon Musk,
no.
But going onto Twitter and finding spoilers out, or or playing through, or watching. It's like same as watching TV shows, kind of finding spoilers for House of the Dragon before you could even finish watching it. I remember watching Game of Thrones for the first time, and
oh God,
and being too scared to open up Twitter because the Monday after the episode's shown, you're just fearful of it. But I think that at the games where we were playing at the time, you've got like your Destinies, you've got Call of Duties and different things like that. These games is a service where you're constantly going on there day by day, getting your challenges, getting things done, and it's like you miss 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month of that, and you feel like you're completely out of the loop.
Yeah, I mean, even if you think about like a battle pass,
yeah,
I mean that I can't. You get so quickly burnt out trying to go through a battle pass because but you get to the end of it and it's like, fuck, that wasn't worth it. Like I'm just done in. And I say that as a Marvel Snap player. Right?
Yeah,
I've got a battle pass, but that gives you kind of achievable goals, but you still have to do it every single day. And you're right, that's just not going to be a reality for the vast majority of people out there, selves included, because we don't do that.
No.
Like, we don't go on and play these things every single day. We kind of go at our own pace, and I think that's where the kind of burnout thing comes into the equation. Because what is it?
Wayne?
Really? You're listening to this, there's probably going to be a bit of a harsh cut, and that's just because some daddy duties had to kick into place there. It never ends. It is a full-time job. So, yeah, we're just going to pick things back up for what we were talking about at the end of our topic, just around Burnout
Yeah.
in itself. And I think really to kind of wrap it up, like I says, life's hard, and particularly if you're juggling stuff and responsibilities, work, kids, all the rest of it. You're going to get burnt out on stuff,
Yeah.
and your hobby, a love of gaming, is going to take a hit, as is everything. And all I would say is, look after yourself, prioritize a bit of self care, recharge your batteries, and it will all come back to you.
Yeah.
It'll go right in the end. If anybody's out there just going through that tough time, it can be a lot, but you will get on the other side of it. And as Scott had said, having other people around you, talking to other people makes a hell of a difference.
Yeah.
Start a podcast if you're on, just blather to people.
I know, aye, quite right, aye.
But yeah, look after yourself out there, and life finds a way to burn you out, but it'll also find a way to pick you back up as well.
Yes.
So yeah, and on that note, I think it's time that we dig into our next part of the podcast, which of course is the Pixel Picks Showdown, the internet's one and only greatest ever debate show, where two gentlemen have a nice debate about what games feature on the list. It's been a long podcast.
That was
a long podcast. But yeah, this week we're all going to be talking about our favourite stealth games, which ones we can feature on the Pixel Picks Showdown list, which of course is the definitive list of games that we would hand down to the next generation of gamers. And last time we were on this, the subject was of course challenging games, and I believe my pick came on top. I didn't play fair. It was Hades that's on that, and that joins our other winners with Super Mario Odyssey, Tekken 3, Batman Arkham Asylum, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, and of course Hades. But this week, Scott, it's all about stealth. So, don't hide your picks. Let's just go.
Right.
Let's go.
So, anyone who knows me, who knows anything about me, favourite game of all time is obviously Metal Gear Solid 3. I don't know why I said 3 like that. It was so weird.
Keeping us in suspense.
Keeping everyone in suspense. But the minute you said stealth games, obviously the one I'm going to choose is the one that I'm going to choose. But immediately in thinking about what other games could I potentially have a look at, and then I thought I might actually go for one of them, because if I go for one that's really obvious, then it's obvious and it's fine. But maybe I want to have a wee conversation about stealth games as a whole. So I thought Metal Gear Solid, the first Metal Gear Solid, is a brilliant game. It's obviously excellent, right? We know that. And playing the Master Collection recently and actually getting the platinum for that game has, solidified it in sort of upper echelons anyway. It doesn't really feel like a stealth game though. It's as the stealth genre has moved on, it doesn't really fit that bracket. It's if stealth games are just run away for things, holding a grenade so you run faster, then that's how you do it. But the minute we started talking about stealth games, I could go with Metal Gear Solid 3, I could go with Metal Gear Solid 2, I could even, push the boat out there and maybe go for Metal Gear Solid 5, because I'm obviously the biggest fan of Metal Gear Solid 5. But I'm thinking, what is a stealth game that I really enjoy that carries itself like a stealth game? You get rewarded for playing it stealthily.
Yep.
And the main character in it has an iconic voice. There's been rumblings of the remake for a very long time.
Oh, I know where he's going with this.
And they're starting to resurface soon, so hopefully we get some more news about it. But I'm actually going to go for Splinter Cell.
Okay.
I think
surprised.
that Splinter Cell, the original Splinter Cell, is probably the stealthiest stealth game that has ever been stealthed.
Okay. I suppose when you think about all of the elements of stealth, you're thinking about, as you've said, this neck of the woods spy pish, like the whole goggles and, big corporations and busting in and, the mundaneness almost of the settings, like office blocks,
but even just the different ways that you kind of like traverse the world.
Yeah.
Like you've obviously got shimmying across like poles. You've got, the weird jumping up the walls motion that you can kind of shoot from. Like the way that it developed over the course of the actual franchise is incredible. And obviously we know what happened at the end, but it's just Sam Fisher is he's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, and I love this is coming from a pure diehard Metal Gear Solid fan. Like I love Metal Gear Solid more than I love food. But
That's
hey,
true. He
have
starved
you
himself,
seen me?
Kojima.
It's but you know, I think that as the series went on, I love Metal Gear Solid 5, but it kind of soured me on the series as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And as you play them again, you know, it's they've obviously they pushed the stealth genre where it needed to go, and it made stealth games a whole thing. But I think if you're looking at stealth games as a package, I don't think you could look at anything but Splinter Cell. It has everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got you know the darkness meter. Like you're actually rewarded for moving about in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I think a remake for a game like that would be absolutely incredible as well.
Yeah, it would be.
Like that motion and things like that, and even like the try, you know, the goggles.
Mhm.
I couldn't think of the word there,
The night
but
vision
the night
goggles.
vision goggles. You know, they're there's no reason. Like he's got a third eye that he can see through. It doesn't make any sense for it to be there, but it's just I love that game. I remember playing it for the first time and being blown away by it. I couldn't finish it because obviously young and don't understand how to finish games at that point in time.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
I went back and I think when I got my Xbox, I actually went back and bought them again. Because you can play them backwards compatible and they run buttery smooth and it's worth a go. They've obviously not aged great, but I
Yeah.
think that if you went back and played OG Metal Gear Solid 3 on the PlayStation 2, you'd find that doesn't run
No.
great, you know.
No.
And there's obviously downsides to it, but I mean, my heart tells me it's Metal Gear Solid 3, and my head tells me that it's Metal Gear Solid 3. But I'm going to go for Splinter Cell because I think that that's a more interesting pick. If you're going for stealth games, if it was action games and if it was games that I bloody love, then it's Metal Gear Solid 3. But
Hmm.
I think that the topic is stealth, and everything that you do within Splinter Cell is stealthy.
That's a good pick. That's a very good pick. I think, you know, I had the same. I ran the rings around it as well because I'm like stealth. It's Metal Gear Solid. Obviously, I'm coming straight to it, and I'm like, right, okay, let's pick it apart. Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, probably more action orientated in the cold light of day now. Metal Gear Solid 3 in terms of that stealth experience, and for the first, you know, just being chucked into the jungle and the stealth system, even like with the percentages of the camouflage and all that, it did for the first time at least just add a little extra dimension of like, oh, what I do counts. I even thought about Metal Gear Solid 4 with the Octo Camo, which is great, but that was really, you know, in the setting of it being within that war zone. And then obviously MGS5, which is one of the best games ever. I mean, the story lets it down. It's a wee bit indulgent and leads to nowhere and doesn't really fulfill its promise and set up. But I thought, well, if I pick that, I might as well pick Far Cry or something, you know, just because, you know, binoculars, tagging and all the rest of that. So then that kind of put me down the garden path. And then I thought, right, well, from a gameplay perspective, stealth, I then considered The Last of Us Part 2 because I
Yes.
thought stealth in that, the kind of verticality of the gameplay within it, and again, that feeling of it's yourself against the odds to get through and push through. But I did kind of veer into, as amazing as it is, you know, that was very much stealth and action blend together.
Mm-hmm.
Good pick, but not my pick. So I thought, right, well, what else? What other game did I feel like that where it was like I have to, or I can be stealthy? Because all these games you can pick other different options. And for me, I went with Dishonored 2
Mm-hmm.
because a game where you can, of course, play it stealthily if you want to. You can play it, you know, guns blazing as well, kind of like a Deus Ex type of
Yeah.
approach, which is another thing I did think briefly. But my love for Dishonored 2 just has to be represented somewhere on this list,
Mhm.
or at least in the debates. The game's just utterly fantastic and it empowers you as well, which I think is really important in a stealth game. But it gives you a means it's not like insta fail,
Yeah.
you know, which is something which is such a pain in the ass. I think that's such a good component of like the problem solving aspect of a stealth game, and Dishonored 2 gives you that. Don't get me wrong, when I think back to it, every time I approach a level, it's I'm going to be stealthy. I'm going to go to the rooftops. I'm going to teleport up there and make my way through, and try not to kill people. I'm trying to do it non-lethal. But I distinctly remember my first playthrough of that game and absolutely ballsing it up about, on the third or fourth mission, and the guards just kept coming, and I was chibbing them left, right, and centre, and just had a pile of bodies everywhere. And, for me, my pick was, and it is going to be, Dishonored 2, just because I feel that it really does give you that power fantasy.
Yeah.
You feel in control, just about, but the odds are stacked against you to get through it. And as you progress through those levels, it really is like, it can go tits up.
Yeah.
As I've described, you can make your way through it. But if you do, and maybe this is just me, if I got through a level by blunder, like plan A, stealthy, ninja, getting through that, no bother, goes tits up and I just have to start chipping folk or whatever, it just makes me want to restart it.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like the optimum way to get through it, of course, is a stealthy playthrough. And of course, add into that whale punk some cool story, some kind of supernatural things and all the cool powers as well. It's been a long time since I've played it. I'm actually kind of like, I need to go back and replay it now. Because I think Arcane are just the masters when it comes to just giving you the tools within that kind of sandbox of like, right, well, you can do it this way, but we're giving you the tools to do it the other way. And I know it probably could be categorized as an action game, but I'm going to put this as a stealth one because it just feels like that's the optimum way it wants you to do it that way.
That's the way it wants you to play it.
Yeah.
It's not a game that I've played. It's a game that you've told me to play
many times.
Maybe you'll deserve the moniker Tastemaker after I actually do it. But I played the first one, and I can't imagine there's much variation in terms of what the whole gameplay loop is, in terms of what the end goal is. I remember in that game where you are rewarded obviously for playing it stealthily, and it feels good when you do it.
Yeah.
For me, my love for first person games is not there at all. I cannot stand them, but it was one game that I did enjoy it. I think for me, it doesn't hit quite as hard in terms of stealthily, because I can't. There's no real. It's just going to seem a bit daft saying this, but there's no real plan for it.
Yeah,
it's, as you say, it's everything or nothing at a point. And similarly to The Last of Us 2, when you're talking about that, in terms of when something would go wrong in that game, immediately restart checkpoint. And that's probably how I would play Dishonored, or when I played it last time, that's how I would do it, is constantly just restarting the levels, because you do want to kind of get through the kind of perfect path for it.
That's the puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah, and even sort of with like Deathloop and stuff as well. Like, that would have been a good choice in terms of that. But again,
do you know, I did think about Deathloop, but and that's a game that I've played more recently, but I'm like, did I play that stealthily? And I probably
what I was going to say is that I think that you go with the best of intentions with it, but then again, it ends sort of tits up, as you say. I don't know, all the characters kind of look a bit like Hugo Weaving as well, so that certainly gets points on it. But I think for me, with the kind of comparison there, we're obviously comparing the two. With Splinter Cell, you've got, if you don't see into something, if you can't see into a room, you've got like your wee cameras and stuff like that. You can shoot into the walls, you can see it, you can plan ahead.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, it's, as you say, if it goes wrong, then it's not stealthy anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, when I compare the two, I definitely feel that's like, maybe I should have picked something else. It's but I had to go with my heart. But I do think, if I say, I think Splinter Cell is absolutely more of like a stealth game, in the sense that it just fits the vibe more.
Yeah, I think with Dishonored, it's a game that you can play stealthily, whereas Splinter Cell is a game that you have to play stealthily.
Yeah, it's centered around it, thematically as well as gameplay wise, it's just so well executed in how they do it. And I suppose, you could say Splinter Cell is a franchise. I'm shocked that neither one of us have picked Metal Gear Solid. I think that's on purpose.
I think that it's something that's going to come up. I mean, if this is a series of games that we have to pass down. There's no way that I'm not handing a copy of Metal Gear Solid to someone, and it will come up.
Maybe one week we could do like the genre has to be one with like eccentric bosses or something like that.
Metal Gear Solid games.
Exactly.
So we have to argue that. It's
I think, you know, looking at it, yeah, it's like Splinter Cell. I mean, I can't in my right mind put Dishonored 2. I mean, don't get me wrong, probably Dishonored 2 is a better game than Splinter Cell.
I'd probably agree with you on that, even though I've never played it. But I could probably agree with you on that because there's more variety in it.
Yeah, there's so much depth in it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit and advertise or pontificate about that again. But just please play it. But yeah, I think, you know, for this week, yeah, I've got to hand it to you. I think we put Splinter Cell on that list for sure.
Finally.
Well done. Back and forth.
I know.
Back and forth, which means next week I'm going to have a really unfair pick. That's what I tend to do, follow the pattern. I need to just do that when I'm on top instead of kind of going for my bougie picks. But yeah, no, but that wraps it up for another week, of course. Again, thank you all for listening to us, of course, tuning in. Don't know what you say, it's not radio.
Not radio.
Of course, if you like what you hear and you do enjoy the podcast as well, if you leave us a 5-star review on wherever you are hearing us, that really does help us out, and it does make a big difference in your algorithms and just helping us to reach more people. Of course, you can find me on Twitter, I'm not calling it another name, at Carmelite. Scott, where can people find you?
I can be found in the same place. I think my username's Llamaman91.
It is.
If you type in Llamaman and look for the Kirby profile picture, you'll find me.
That's it.
I think by this, it hopefully will still be Kirby at this point, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Aye, and you'll see me when I had hair.
Aye.
just my head. And of course, a big shout out to our producer and music man himself, Sean Murray, for what he does on the podcast. We appreciate you, and of course, you know, we wouldn't be able to make this happen without him. And again, you can listen to us on all your major podcast platforms of choice. And of course, don't forget to give us a follow on Twitter at pixel_parents. And feel free to write us in at pixelparentspodcast@gmail.com. But that wraps everything up for this week. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you then. Play Alan Wake 2.